Okay, so today's broadcast is being sponsored by Rav Benzi Bench in memory of his great grandfather, Rav Shlomo Yitasuyo Ben Yitzchak Ben Yitzchak Isaac Gutman, Allah Shalom, whose yahrzeit is today Chav Beis Kislev in the Shmosai Tzura the Tzur HaChayim. It should be a big schus for his neshama, and he should see a lot of nachas of this. Shkoich Benzi. Okay, so I believe that we're in the middle of a discussion that sort of went from Amud Beis onto the Amud Aleph, so we have to just get our memories refreshed into what was going on. And what the Gemara was discussing was when you say Aneinu. The Gemara came out, Rebbe came out that you say Aneinu in Shemei Tefillah, you don't say a separate Tefillah for it. But the Gemara challenged that because the Brisa says, Ein Bein, I'm going back to Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, Yud Gimel Amud Beis, that is, the Gemara says, Ein Bein Yachid, the Kibul Alav Taanis, the Brisa says, Ein Bein Yachid L'Tzibur, El Shazem Ispal Shmoyne Esrei, V'zem Ispal Teisha Esrei. So, Chassid, welcome back. So there's a Yachid that's Mispal Shmoyne Esrei, and then there's a Tzibur that is Mispal Teisha Esrei. And the Gemara wanted to learn that this brisa is making a distinction between the Yachid HaMispalel and the Bal Tefillah who's davening. So the way the Gemara was learning this brisa, we're on Yud Amud Aleph, but I'm just going back to review because it's part of a flow. So the way the Gemara learned the brisa is that on the Taanis, and we'll have to determine which Taanis it is that we're speaking about, the Yachid says Aneinu in Shemei Tefillah, and the Bal Tefillah makes a separate bracha for Aneinu, and therefore, instead of 18 brachas of Shmoyne Esrei, it's 19. Of course, not counting the Lam Al Shina. The problem is that we found another brisa that says that the Shliach Tzibur on the Taanis says 24 brachas. And that is our discrepancy here. Is it 19 or is it 24? So the Gemara first brought a brisa that said there's no difference between the first set of Taanis and the second set of Taanis. So just to refresh our memory, there were actually 3 sets of progressively more serious Taanesim that the Tzibur had to fast. So first there's the first 3 fasts that the Yechidim fasted, and that's not what we're discussing. Then there were the 3 fasts, the first 3 fasts that everybody fasted, and they were only day fasts, and they were not all the 5 Inuyim. Then, if that didn't work, they upped the ante, and then they added another 3 days of fasting, and those were already 24-hour fasts with the 5 Inuyim. And if that didn't work, then they made a 3rd set of fasts, which were 7 days. So the Brisa says there's no difference between the first set of 3 and the second set of 3, besides Asiyas Malach. But the Brisa doesn't make a distinction about the 24. So it seems like the same amount of brachas and Shmoyne Esrei that the Shliach Tzibur says on the first set of fasts, he's going to say on the second set of fasts. Yet the Gemara here wanted to say that maybe only the second set of fasts are there 24 brachas, and on the first set of fasts, there's only 19 brachas. So the Gemara said, maybe you'll say Tana V'Shayir, maybe, even though it says Ein Bein, maybe it's Lav Dafka. Then the Gemara went to a brisa that talks about the second set of fasts versus the third set of fasts. And it says, Ein Bein Gimel Shniyos L'Sheva Achraynos Elo Shebe'elu Masrin V'Nayal L'Sechanuyos. So once again, we made a deal. If these are the only 2 differences that the brisa identifies between the second set of fasts and the third set of fasts, well, then the Gabi brachas are all the same. So once again, do you say the 24 or not? So the Gemara, which we finished off with yesterday, thought to say Tana V'Shayir. Maybe the Brisa left out the fact that on the third set of fasts there are 24 brachas that the Shliach Tzibur says, but on the second set of fasts there aren't. And then the question is could you say Tana V'Shayir? So the last thing we learned yesterday was, anyway, there's a glaring omission from the Brisa about a difference between the second set of fasts and the third set of fasts. And that difference is, on the third set of fasts, they used to take out the bima into the public square and they davened barabim, while in the earlier fasts they davened in the besmedrish. The Brisa doesn't mention that distinction. So you see the Brisa is not really listing off every distinction between the second set of fasts and third set of fasts. It missed this out. Zok Gemara, that's not a right, because the only thing that the Tana is listing as differences between the second set of fasts and third set of fasts are items that you might not know about. And therefore, the Tana wants to make us aware of it. But everybody knows that the Omer is taken out into the square by a big fast, because that's done by Hesha. That makes a tumble. So you can't bring me a raya from the fact that the Tana omitted that item, that he omits things, because that item would not have been part of his scope of education to us. Everything is done for Ram, it's done in the shul, but it's not something that makes such a tumble. You know, if the Shlich Tzibur says 24, not everybody would notice that. If they weren't listening, so no. Here. So Zok Gemara, Amar Abashi, Masnisin Nami Deka. We can actually bring a raya from our Mishnah that for the second set of brachas and for the third set, for the second set of Taanis and for the third set of Taanis, in both those cases, they did say 24 brachas. The Ketani we learned, Ma'elu Yiseris al Harishonos. Our Mishnah tells us, the last Mishnah that we learned, in what way are the third set of fasting, the 7 days, more serious, more severe than the earlier ones? But a third set of fast, they're masriya, and we're going to soon discuss what that means. And the stores are forced to be closed. Aval, the Gemara adds, but for every other item, so you clearly see that if there's 24 brachas that the Shlich Tzibur says by the second set of fasts, he surely says the same by the third set of fasts. And if you're going to tell me that maybe there's also a distinction in the amount of brachas, because there's a difference between the second set of fasts and the third set of fasts, and the Tana may have omitted this and didn't make a complete list of differences. It says in the Mishnah, clearly the Tana is being accurate. Are you saying that when it says ma'elu, when the Tana says ma'elu, it's being very specific? Is that so? The problem is that it omitted the item about the bima, because that for sure we know is a distinction between the second set of fasts and the third set of fasts. The same thing we said a moment ago. The fact that the Tana omitted to say the difference between the bima being inside or outside, that's not really an issue. Why? And here the Gemara says a different svara from what we learned earlier. Because in the next parak of Taanis, the Tana mentions that over there. So the Tana here didn't feel the need to mention all the details, because anyway, he's going to teach this to us later. Taanis asks, why was there a reason to change the svara that we said earlier, that it's Bafahesha? That's what the Tana didn't say. So Taanis has a different reason here.
Why wouldn't you teach it first and leave it out later? Why would you leave it now and then teach it later if this is first?
I don't know. That's a very good question. But at least he didn't omit it completely. So So now we're at this point where pretty much everything is lavdafka, and as long as it's taught somewhere, it doesn't have to be taught here. Let's say that even though the Tana didn't mention the distinction between when Chazan says 24 brachas and when the Chazan doesn't say 24 brachas, that's not called omitting something. Because even the halacha of the 24 brachas are mentioned in the next parak. So therefore, we don't have a raya anymore. All we know is that for sure, by the first set of brachas, they did not say 24, and that's what the brisa could mean. Is there the Tana says 19. We know by the third set of brachas, for sure, by the third set of Taanis, for sure, the Baltfila said 24 brachas in the Shemona Esrei, and in the central, in the middle set of Taanis, That's not clear. It depends on how you learn the different prices, whether or not those set of Taanis, the Baltfila said 24 brachas. Beautiful. Beautiful. So it can go either way. Zok to Gemara Vayta. My Havel. So Lamaisa, where do you say Anenu? When you're on the Taanis Tzibur, at what point do you say Anenu? Amar Shmuel bar Sasritoi, V'chinam Rab Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav. You say it ben Goyel Roife. The Yochid says a separate bracha of Anenu, which we of course do not pass on. Rab Ashi Amar Mishmei Rab Yanai, Berei Rabbi Shmuel is by Shemei Tefillah. The Hilchasa by Shemei Tefillah. We pass on Allah Lamaisa that where is the Anenu said? It said in the bracha of Shemei Tefillah, just like we do. Beautiful. Zok to Gemara. Tani Chada, we learned one brayza that says, Ubarais umanikos, women who are expecting, or women who've just given birth and they're nursing their children, misanis b'rishonos, they'll fast by the first set of fasts, ve'ein misanis b'achronos, and they won't fast by the last set of fasts. So it's not quite clear what we're referring to, because just let's think about it logically. The later sets of fasts are more serious. So it's a little bit interesting why they would fast by the earlier fasts, where it's not so serious, but they don't fast by the later fasts. So the Gemara, Rashi that tells us for later is because the earlier fasts are much easier for them to do. It's not al chamuchinuyim, it's not 24 hours. We had another brayza that said misanis b'achronos, vein misanis b'rishonos. They only fast the last set and not the first set. And then the Tanya Yidach, we have a third brayza that said ein misanis loy b'rishonos v'loy b'achronos. So now it's literally all over the place. When do they fast? Amar Rabashi, let me tell you how you could make sense out of all of this. Nakoit amtziyasa biyodecha the mitartin kulu. Say that the fast that they fast is the middle one. And the way we understand the brayse, if we go through it, is the first brayse says, but the two that we're talking about here are the second set and the third set. So it's saying that the Uber Shemanikos will fast the second set, but not the third set. V'tanya idich, the second brayse said, Misanis b'achronis, ve'en misanis b'rishonos. That's Tana is only addressing the first two sets. So we say they fast the second of the first two sets, which is once again the middle set. That's speaking about the first set and the third set. Once again, they don't fast, they only fast during the center set. Rashi gives us an explanation as to why. So let's see Rashi. Tzures, you should answer the Bishaloshem Tzoyes Hayu Misad. The fast that Ubaris and Menikos are part of is the center set. And this way, all of these three brises will make sense. It's not really referring to the first set and the second set. Rather, the first set referred to in that brisa is Elam Tzoyes. The middle set is the set that's being referred to in this brisa as the first set. It makes sense to call the middle set the first set if you're comparing them to the third set, because these are before the third set. But they don't fast the last 7 fasts. Why not? So this is now an important Rashi telling us why they wouldn't fast by the last set. Since there's 7 fasts, it's simply too much for them. That's why they're not part of it. Now the brayse that says that's referring to the first 2 fasts. So why wouldn't they fast on the first set of fasts? Those are light, easy, single-day fasts. The situation isn't severe and serious and critical enough to make that even Ubaris and Menikos should fast. So we don't let them fast if it's not a very serious, critical situation. By the time the second fast comes along, then it's a little bit more serious. It's more critical. So we'll have the Ubaris fast. When it's really critical and there's a 7-day fast, that's too much for them, and therefore they don't fast. Why is the last set of fasts more severe than the first? So for what is the Bryce? What does our Mishnah mean when the Mishnah is Masriyan? What does Masriyan mean? It means they blew shofars. They blew into each of the but each of the extra 6 brachas they would blow. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shmuel, Bashilas, Mishmei Derav, Omar Ba'anenu. They said Anenu, but we don't mean the Anenu that we say when we make a fast. The Anenu that this means over here is at the end of Slichus, we always say Anenu Hashem Anenu. If we look at Rashi, he listed off Anenu Avinu Anenu, Anenu like Avram Anenu, Anenu like Yitzchak Anenu, Anenu like Yaakov Anenu. All those Anenus that we say that big shtickle, those are very good to be Ma'ir Rachamim. That's the Anenu that are said on those tefillos. So we seem to have a chloikis what Masriin means. So it seems like everyone is exclusive. Mandamar Ba'anenu, Lemar B'Shofars. The Mandamar who holds that you said the special Anenu held you didn't blow shofar. Mandamar B'Shofar, Lemar Ba'anenu. The Mandamar who said that they blew shofar held they didn't say that Anenu. But we're going to prove that wrong. Because Vatanya we learned, Ein Poichsin Misheva Taanis al Tzibur, Shobehen Yud Ches Hasrois. There's going to be 7 Taanis on the Tzibur, which is the last set, which will have 18 Hasrois, but it doesn't say clearly yet what Hasrois are, but here the Bryce is very explicit. The similar Dover Yerichai, and the similar Dover Yerichai, and Yerichai Shofar Shabbat. By Yerichai, they went around the city and they blew shofars, and that's what brought the walls down. So from this Bryce, you see black and white that Masriyan related to these tiniest, the third set of tiniest is the shofar. So what is the Mandamar who says it's Anenu? It's going to upslug the Mandamar who says Anenu. It must be that everybody agrees that blowing shofar means Asra. That's not a dispute. So Avada, the Mandamar who holds by Anenu, is Moida, that by our Tanesim, Avada, you blow shofar. Keep ligi ba'anenu. They're arguing not in our case of our Mishnah that's discussing the fasts that are related to rain. Rather, it's referring to a different type of more general fast on other types of issues that arise that cause people to fast. Mar Savar, Kari Lehasra. One Mandamar holds that you can use it because in the Bryce that it talks about these other types of fasts, it also uses the word Asra. And the Gemara is going to quote those Bryces soon. So one Mandamar holds over there, the Asra could mean saying Anenu, and it doesn't necessarily mean blowing shofar. And the other Mandamar holds no, it's only Asra only means blowing shofar. So now we're saying that even the Mandamar who holds that Hasra means Anenu, it also means shofar. Because Hasra has to mean shofar. That was what we've proven from the Brisa with Yerichai. But the Mandamar who holds that Hasra means with a shofar, he would hold that you never say Anenu. Hasra is not good Anenu. Hasra means exclusively blowing the shofar. Fact Gemara, I'm going to prove that wrong as well. Vatanya, Bishar kol mini peranis hamisrakshus. What if Klal Yisrael is not suffering from a lack of rain, but they're suffering from some other issue? Going chichel. There's some type of disease going around that makes everybody terribly itchy. Or chagav, which are certain grasshoppers that are going to eat up the produce. Or zavuv, a certain fly. Tzures, these are all insects that bite and cause trouble. The Yitushim, or Vishiluach, Mechoshim, Vachrabim, or if we have a plague of snakes and scorpions, there it says, Loi Hayim Masriyan, they would not be Masriya, Ella Tzayakin, all they would do is cry out and scream to Hashem. So the Gemara is Medayik from this price. If Tza'aka means Bepeh, then Asra is B'Shofrais. So if Asra is B'Shofrais, then you have a clear proof that Asra is only B'Shofrais and not at all saying Anenu. So we have a problem we wanted to say a moment ago. That the Tana who says it means Anenu holds it could mean both, Anenu or Shofars, but from this price it seems to indicate that it could only mean Shofar and not Anenu, because then it would be called Tza'aka. So Gemara, you're right. The Brisa you just quoted holds that Asra could only be Tia Shofar. But there's another Brisa who holds that Ashra could mean Tefillah, could mean Anein. Tanoi Tamachloik is Tanoi. The Tanya, Al Elu Masriyan B'Shabbos. On the following issues, you're Masriya on Shabbos. And the Rashi tells us right off the bat, which the Gemara will tell us, that you can't blow shofar on Shabbos. So the moment the Bride says you're Masriya on Shabbos, you know surely Masriyan here does not mean shofar. And what are the items that you would be mispal on Shabbos? Al Ir Shekifu Gaius, a city that's surrounded by an army, so they're in grave danger of getting attacked. A Nor, or there's an overflowing river that's going to flood the city. Or if people are on a ship that's in a storm that's in danger of capsizing. Rabbi Yosy said on these types of things, LaEzra, you're allowed to call out for help. In other words, you're allowed to call rescuers. You're allowed to call Atzalah. But you're not allowed to cry to Hashem. You're not allowed to cry to Hashem. Why aren't you allowed to cry out to Hashem? Duvi's asking. So Rashi says, if you look at the second line from the bottom, Tefillah, you're not allowed to daven for these Tzures. You know why? We don't know that our tefillas will be for sure answered. So therefore, we're not allowed to do things on Shabbos. But guaranteed practical issues like calling rescuers, that you're allowed to do.
Are we allowed to daven for chayla on Shabbos? We don't usually, but if it's someone's really chayla, we do say someone, don't we?
So there's a shayla about that. So let me finish the two lines and then we'll elaborate. So when it says Masrin in this price, so what does it refer to? Ilema b'shofar, it cannot be. Shofar b'Shabbos mishari, you know what about shofar at Shabbos. Lav b'anenu, it means we're davening v'kar le'asra shmamida. So there's support for this Amoira to say that Hasra does not mean exclusively shofar. Hasra could also mean tefillah. So this is a very interesting shayla. I want to start off with a story that happened in Lakewood when I was there. So there was a Ger Tzedek who lived in yeshiva. He was a single guy. He lived by himself. He didn't have anything, so they let him stay in yeshiva. He learned the whole day. He's a fine man. His name was Dr. Ken Trabert. He was able to write prescriptions. So he was like an in-house doctor who gave you antibiotics when you needed, who gave you a prescription when you needed. But he was a real doctor. Yeah, he was empty. You remember him? Oh. So one day there was a Yid, a yeshiva bacher on Tzures who was very, very sick. I believe he had meningitis. He was in a very bad situation. And it got to Rav David Shustel's attention. So Rav David Shustel on Yom Tov ran to grab Dr. Traber, and they went to visit this boy in his dorm room on Shavuos. He was very sick, and Rav David got very nervous. He's responsible. So Rav David said, Dr. Traber, what do we need to do? So Dr. Traber says, Rosh Yeshiva, Ikamein, he couldn't say Ches. Ikamein, we're talking to him. So Rav David got argued, Nay, Ikamein, epis lamaisa. But the point is, it's halacha lamaisa that you're allowed to be mechal Shabbos for a choila mesukkan. You're allowed to be mechal Shabbos to do something that's medically sound, but to do skulas, you're not allowed to be mechal Shabbos for. The halacha that you're mechal Shabbos for pekuch nefesh is only when you're doing something that's medically sound. That's something that we know works. To do a skula, you can't. And there was a famous story with a Rav who there was someone that was very sick, and he sent a letter on Shabbos to a gadol in a different city. And I'm trying to remember, this happened with the Marsham from Bijan, Maram from Bijan, Shalom Shadran's great-great-grandfather. And what happened is someone sent a letter on Shabbos to a Rebbe, to a gadol, to daven for somebody. And there was a big Rav that we all know. I don't remember who the Rav was, who wanted to remove this fellow from the Rabbanos because he did a big avla. He was Machal Shabbos. You're not allowed to send a kvittel to our Rebbe on Shabbos. You're only allowed to do things that are medically sound. He wanted to pull him away. So I don't know what the psak halacha was, if this Rav had to lose his Rabbanah for such a violation. But I know that when the Rav received the request, he said, oy vey, they weren't allowed to send it to me. They sent it to me anyway. I better daven good, because if I don't save this guy's life, if my feelings don't save this guy's life, then it's mamish chil Shabbos. At least if I save his life, maybe it could be retroactively justified. But I'll call upon him, that is the halacha. That for tefillah, you're not machal Shabbos, only for medically sound practices.
You're talking about acts that aren't the actual tefillah that are machal Shabbos. The actual tefillah You're
No,
saying
the
that's what you
actual
said.
about you're allowed
But
to
Gemara is saying not to say the actual tefillah.
But Rashi says, and the Brisa says that you don't cry out to Hashem because we cannot be betuchim kol kach shetoil to the and you're
But
not
we
supposed
do.
to. Yeah, so I don't know the reason for that. But I'm sure there's a good reason for that. And there might be a big difference between making a mishaberach and actually having a whole public tefillah section of beseeching the Rebbeinu Shlom. I don't think they would call a whole tehillim get together. They won't make a tehillim gathering on Shabbos. But to make a mishaberach, that's a different story. So I don't know the reasoning for everything, but it is a shayla. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Bishani de Rabbi Yehuda and Nasiya have a tzayra. In the days of Rabbi Yehuda and Nasiya, there was a problem. There was a problem that afflicted the community. It wasn't rain or a lack of rain. It was some other problem. Zok to Gemara. So what he did is gozar tlas esrei taanis. He was gozer 13 taanis, basically the same cycle that you have for rain, 3, 3, and 7. V'lo yani, and it didn't work. Now we know that we don't do anymore because it's too late already in the season by rain. But this was some other generic type of problem which didn't have an expiry date. So he wanted to make more tiniest because there's a xer that he had to break. Amalei Rabami. Don't we say that you're not supposed to be the matriach to tzibur too much? Like how much could you make them fast? Amar Rab Ami the Ovid, like Armeu the Ovid. Rab Ami was being selfish because Rab Ami didn't want to fast, so he made that taina. But it's not really a good taina. When do we say you have to stop fasting after 13? Or not you have to stop fasting, but the Rabbanan aren't going to impose fasting on everybody. That's when you're davening for rain. But other piranhas that don't have an expiry date, you could continue to make fasts on the tzibur until the zera is broken. It only applies to rain. You continue to fast and do tshuva until we break the gzera. So this seems to be a upshot of Rabami who said that even for other type of tzores that don't have expiry dates, you're not matriach the tzibur. It's actually a machlokes tanoim how much you're matriach the tzibur to fast. The Tanya, ein goes when Yosy mishlosh esrei taanis al tzibur, levisha ein matrichin as that tzibur Yosy midai devei Rebbe, and that's perfectly consistent with Rabami. The only reason why they stopped being geyser tiniest on rain is because the time for rain is already past, and now you don't need rain anymore. But for other gzeres without an expiry, of course, you continue imposing fasts on the tzibur. The people of Ninveh sent a letter to Rebbe. Us. This is very relevant to us nowadays. We are a community that we need rain even in the summer. Just like us in Chutz La'aretz, right? We need rain in the summer too. The summer is a growing season for us. We don't have the same agricultural seasons as they had in Eretz Yisrael, where they planted in the winter, they harvested in the summer. We plant in the summer. So we need rain in Tammuz. Hey Chinavid, what should we do when we make our fast? Ki Yechidim Daminun, are we like Yechidim? And therefore, the Gemara is going to elaborate. Ki Yechidim Daminun, or Kirab Daminun. Or are we treated like a rabbi? What is the difference? Are we like individual people asking for our individual needs? So therefore, where do we say Anenu? We'll say Anenu in Shemei Tefillah, and that's where we will ask Hashem to help us, and that's where we make our davening. Or do we say V'sein Talamota? In other words, we need rain. So do we say V'sein Talamota during the season that we need rain? Or no, we have to say the same bracha as everybody else. And if we need rain in this community, in this area of the world, we'll ask for rain in Shemei Tefillah, which is where we ask our personal bakashas. Shalach lahu. So Rabbi answered back, Yechidim Damisu. You're like Yechidim In other words, the Welt, our Nusach HaTfilah is based on Eretz Yisrael. If you have a separate need that you need rain, and you live in Toronto, then Ubishemei Tfilah, you can ask for rain, especially in Shemei Tfilah, not in Baruch. Meisvei, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Eimasa. When do we say the rules of the halacha of the Taanis is Bisman Shashanim Ketiknan Yisrael Shruina Ad Masan? When we live in Eretz Yisrael and everything runs based on Eretz Yisrael. But nowadays that we're all over the world and we all have different needs and different seasons. So if we need rain in Tammuz, we should say the same Talamata, because we're not sticking to the same system as Eretz Yisrael. Amar Lei, I don't understand. You're asking me a kasha from a brisa on Rebbe, Mas Nisan Ramis Alei de Rebbe, because Rebbe said that they are treated like Chidim and they daven in Shemei Tfilah. Rebbe Tana who Poland. Rebbe's allowed to argue. So you're right. It's a machlokes tanoim. What do? Do you stick to the main format like we do nowadays? And if you have a special tefillah, you'll say it in Shemei Tfilah. Or can we say the same Talmud in the summer because we need rain in the summer? My Havi Allah. So what happened with this Hashayla? Rab Nachman Amar B'Birchas Hashanim, Rab Sheish Amar B'Shemei Tfilah, V'Yochzeh B'Shemei Tfilah, which is exactly what we do. We say the same Talmud only in the winter, and as soon as Pesach comes, we say the same bracha, even though we really do need rain here in Canada for the crops to grow. But Allah is, if you have any special tefillahs, you add it in Shemei Tfilah, but we stick to the same nusach of tefillah dictated by Eretz Yisrael. So to the more, B'Sheni Matinim Chashecha. On Monday, the days that you're not allowed to keep your stores open, they would sort of have it open a little bit in the evening. Rashi says Matin means the doors aren't locked, but they're not really open. So people can sort of sneak in. But on Thursdays, Kol Hayom, you have the doors open all day. But they play Shabbos.
Back door during COVID.
That's what it sounds like. That's right. The Gemara had a shayla. Heichi katani. Exactly what is the Mishnah saying? It's saying the base matanim kashecha. On Mondays, you can never open your door full. You have to do it COVID style, as Duvi said. But even that could only be done in the afternoon. And and on Thursday, you also can't open your door wide. You could open it in this discreet way, but you're allowed to do that all day. Is that what the Mishnah is saying? Or maybe any restriction only applies to Monday, but on Thursday you could open your door like a regular day. That is the shayla. Tashma. So the shayla really is on Thursday when you're open all day. Does it have to be in a discreet fashion, or it could be open wide? Tashma the Tanya. B'sheni matan ata arv u'v'chamishi poischin kalayim kulam b'bikfad Shabbos. So it's pretty explicit. The Bryce elaborates and tells us that on Thursday you could open up for business normally. What if you had two doors? Then you should have one open full and one you should keep closed. At least you could show something about the times. What if you had a bench in front of his door, which means even if he opened his door, it wouldn't be so visible because it would be blocked by the bench that's in front of his door. Then one door. We're going back to one door. Yeah.
So you only have the one door.
That's right. But it's blocked. Its visibility from the street is blocked because of this bench.
You said that you can keep it open anyway?
On a Thursday. Right.
Oh, so this is on a,
We're talking about on a Monday. On a Monday, if your door was open, if your door is blocked, then Pasech Chadaka Veina Choshish, and Rashi says, it's the he said the Asha Einach Nus Tuchalush Sarabim, and the Pesuach Einir Kokach, then Pasech Chadaka Rashi Afilu B'Sheni. Even on a Monday, you could have it full open because it's still somewhat discreet. It's blocked by the benches. What happens if even the third set of fasts go by and it's still not raining? So you limit your business. Tana we learn. What type of binyan do you stop building? The binyan shall simcha. We're talking about building a chuppah. Netiya is netiya shall simcha. It's a special type of plant that's shall simcha, which the Gemara, I believe, will elaborate upon. You're building a chuppah, you're building a place to make a wedding. And Rashi has a couple of different shatim of what this is. Rashi says, it's either a big tree that they plant for shade, and it's a Tishul Simcha. And the earlier Rashi says, whenever a king used to be born, they planted in his name for the newly born king. They planted a tree, and then when he was what's the word when he becomes king? When the king when he's coronated, when he's coronated, they make the throne out of that wood from the tree that they planted for him, or it could be it's a very big elan that has a huge canopy that the king can walk under to get shade and have a nice walk. So either way, it's a luxurious type of device. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Shalom. You're not allowed to openly socialize. Tanarabon Chaverim ein sheila shalom b'neim. Talmidei Chacham won't even talk to each other. They won't greet each other. They know they're supposed to be in a matzav of a little bit of a chayim. But Amei Arch, you don't know better. Sheshoylin, if they say hello to a Talmid Chacham, out of respect, the Talmid Chacham will not ignore them. Rather, machzirim lem b'safa rafa b'chayvid roish. They answer them, but in a very soft voice. So it should be obvious that it's not business as usual, but it's still respectful. They're not ignoring the people who are greeting them. The Talmid Chacham sit wrapped up like avelim uchamunudin, like those who are in chayim. The adam hanazufin lamakim. Until when do they do that? Achirachmu aleim in Hashemayim. They sit ba'avelos until the gezerah is broken. Amar Belazar, ein adam chashiv rashoy lipol al panav, elam kein nenek yeshubanu. An adam chashiv is not allowed to fall on his face. And Rashi says, what that means is, levazos atzmai b'fnei tzibur, to embarrass himself in front of the tzibur, meaning that he falls on his face and tells Hashem, Hashem, give us rain, give us rain. He shouldn't do that. You know why? If it doesn't rain after this whole spectacle, yicharfu, they're going to curse him, they're going to make fun of him. Look, you're useless. Unless you know you're choshev like Yeshua, and you're guaranteed that Hashem will answer, a Rav should not make such a scene and fall on his face to them. Zok to Gemara, Shenemar, it says, Vayoyim Hashem al Yeshua, kum leich lama zeh ata noifel al panach. Hashem told Yeshua, don't fall on your face, come. Why? Because weiter, if you're not going to be answered, you shouldn't do this. Rabbi Lazar, ein adam chashav rishoi lach or sak. A adam chashav is not allowed to put on sackcloth to sit publicly, vavelas, to try to break the gezerah. Why? Unless you know for sure he's going to be answered like Yehoram ben Achav. And Rashi tells us he was a Rasha, but Lamaisa he fasted because of a hunger, and he was able to achieve it. He was able to break the hunger. Shenemar vayichish shmoya melechas divrei isha vayikras begodov hu over alachayma vayara v'nei sakal b'sarek. So you see that he was nena and he did it, but we're not supposed to. So Amar Rabbi Lazar, lo yakoil b'kriya, v'lo yakoil b'nefila. Not everybody is answered with kriya, which is like crying out to Hashem, and not everybody. Kriya means tearing actually. Kriya with an olive is crying to Hashem, and not everybody will be answered by falling on their faces. Different people got answered with different methods. Moshe v'Aaron b'nefila. Moshe and Aaron were answered when they were noifel of Hashem, and Yeshua v'Kalev, they got answered b'kriya when they tore their clothes. Moshe v'Aaron b'nefila d'chseya v'yapal Moshe v'Aaron al pneiam. This was, I think, by the Meraglim. They fell on their face to daven that they shouldn't be exera, and they were listened to. And Yeshua v'Kalev, they were also by the Meraglim, was b'kriya. The way they stopped exeras with kriya, d'chseya Yeshua v'Nun, the Kalev and Yefuna, karu b'gdeim, they tore their clothes. So there's different methods of how to beseech the Rebbeinu Shalom, and different people are more successful with different methods. If it said, and then Yeshua, then I would agree with you. But Yeshua, there's a vav by the Yeshua, which seems to indicate that it's being connected to the earlier statement in the pasuk of Vayapal Moshe V'Aaron al Pneiim. So maybe maybe Yeshua did both. Maybe he did have a yapel and he tore his clothing.
For sure there's both. For sure there's both, because it was cheaper to fall on your face and take care of your clothing, so he started with that. But it didn't work, so he started to take care of clothing.
I hear.
Moshe and Aaron were anxious, they didn't have to go to the step two.
What do you mean? They're both asking for the same thing.
Did Moshe and
They're
Aaron-
both the davening that Hashem shouldn't punish us for the miracle, right? It's having after the Mash miracle. They all happen together.
So then what does it mean that they were answering each individually? If
Because
Aaron-
Moshe only did this and Yeshua only did that. But now we're saying maybe Yeshua did both. So Zok to Gemara, not everybody succeeds with standing up, and not everybody succeeds with bowing down. Malacham bekima, the Sarim b'shtachavav. Why? You see Malacham bekima, the Chsev, Kayamar Hashem, Goy Yisrael Kedoshai. Leviza Nefesh Lemesayiv. This is talking about, this is what Hashem said, the Goyal Yisrael, that lost Lavoi, the kings who were Mevazas. Klal Yisrael was a Mevuzadik nation. We were downtrodden, we were pushed down, right? And we were ruled over by foreign nations. Leviza Nefesh Lemisav Goy Eved Moishlim. And then it says, Malachim Yiru V'kamu. The kings are going to see Klal Yisrael and they're going to stand up for Klal Yisrael also. So you see that the kings, the Goyish kings, they performed kumu. They stood up for Klal Yisrael. But the Sarim of the Goyim, they're going to bow down to Klal Yisrael. Sarim vayishtachavu. So you see, L'asad Lavai, there's going to be different functions that different groups are going to make. The kings are going to stand up for us, and the Sarim are going to bow down to us. Then I would agree with you. It says Sarim vayishtachavu. It's much that the Sarim did both. Maybe they stood up in front of us and then they bowed down. I'll add another similar saying to the group. Not everybody's going to have ayra, and not everyone's going to have simcha. Tzadikim la'ayra, the tzadikim are going to have ayra, but yisharim l'simcha. Tzadikim la'ayra, or zaru al tzad. You see, there's a light for the tzaddik. Ul yisharim simcha, d'chsev ul yishrei leiv simcha. Yishrei leiv are going to have simcha. So, Baruch Hashem, we recite to finish Shabbat. We later hadin alach me'emasai, hadin alach me'emasai, hadin alach me'emasai. Tomorrow we're going to learn Dr. Tzvav, Shabbos, an hour before Mincha. I'm not sure what time Mincha is. Mincha is probably about 4:20. We're probably about 3:20. We'll see when the chart comes out. And also we're going to learn Motzai Shabbos. Oh, are we going to learn 7 or 7:30? That's the question. Because Chaim Tzvi wants to learn at 7:30, right? So let's change it this week to 7:30. And if anybody has a difficult 7:30, please let me know, and maybe we'll change back. But for now, we'll learn 7:30 Motzai Shabbos on Zoom.
How come the tzaddikim don't have simcha?